The first day of the month arrives, and Linda sits at her kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, surrounded by bills, Medicare paperwork, and grocery flyers. Her Social Security deposit, $1,900, has arrived, unchanged from last month, but her Medicare Part B premium has increased again. A few days earlier, Linda read that the average American retiree has more than $600,000 saved. After 41 years of work, raising 2 children, and doing everything she believed was right, her retirement account holds only about $110,000. Quietly, she wonders, did I do something wrong? The answer is no. Linda isn't the problem. The statistic is. I'm Ned, and today we'll uncover what retirement really looks like in America in 2026. We'll separate headlines from reality, explain why so many retirees feel behind, and show why the numbers aren't telling the full story. By the end, you'll probably never look at the word average the same way again. The $600,000 figure comes from averaging the retirement savings of all households between ages 65 and 74. While technically correct, it's highly misleading because a small number of extremely wealthy retirees dramatically inflate the result. Imagine 10 people in a neighborhood bar, each worth less than $50,000. Then Jeff Bezos walks in. Suddenly, the average wealth in the room skyrockets, even though nothing changed for the original 10 people. That's exactly how retirement averages work. The more meaningful number is the median, the point where half of retirees have saved more and half have saved less. According to the Federal Reserve's latest survey of consumer finances, the median retirement savings for Americans aged 65 to 74 is about $200,000, not $600,000. That means the typical retiree has roughly one-third of the savings suggested by the headline figure. Even $200,000 sounds significant until you ask what income it can actually generate. Using the widely cited 4% rule, a $200,000 portfolio provides about $8,000 per year, or roughly $667 per month, before taxes, inflation, and unexpected expenses. After a lifetime of work, that's the reality many retirees face. And remember, that's the median, meaning half of retirees have even less saved. You might assume that's why people have 401ks, but the data tells a different story. Investment firms often celebrate creating new 401k millionaires. Fidelity, for example, regularly highlights customers whose accounts exceed $1 million. While impressive, those retirees represent only a tiny fraction of the tens of millions with 401k plans. The typical account looks very different. The median 401k balance is only about $30,000. Once again, a small number of exceptionally large accounts inflate the average, while the financial reality for most Americans remains hidden behind attention-grabbing headlines. That makes the next number even more important. If your retirement savings generate only a few $100s each month, your primary retirement income probably isn't your investments. It's Social Security. After the 2026 cost of living adjustment, the average retired worker receives about $2,071 per month, or just under $25,000 a year. Linda's $1,900 benefit is below even that average. In many parts of the country, $2,000 barely covers rent for a modest apartment. Add groceries, utilities, prescriptions, insurance, and medical bills, and there's often little left. For millions of Americans, Social Security isn't just part of retirement income. It is retirement income. About 4 in 10 retirees depend on it for most of what they live on, while roughly 1 in 7 rely on it for 90% or more of their total income. That dependence becomes even more concerning when you consider Social Security's financial outlook. According to the Social Security trustees, the retirement trust funds are projected to face a shortfall around 2033. Without congressional action, benefits wouldn't disappear, but they could be reduced to about 77% of scheduled payments, a cut of roughly 23%. For retirees already living on tight budgets, that reduction would be significant. A typical retired couple could lose around $16,500 annually in expected benefits. Returning to Linda's kitchen table, the picture becomes clear. Her savings produce only a few $100s a month. She relies heavily on a below-average Social Security check, and future benefits may be reduced while housing, healthcare, groceries, and insurance continue getting more expensive. That raises an obvious question. If this is what the typical retiree actually has, how much were people supposed to save in the first place? The answer reveals just how wide the gap is between financial advice and financial reality. Americans have already answered the question of how much retirement savings they think they need. Each year, Northwestern Mutual asks people how much money would provide a comfortable retirement. The latest answer, about $1.26 million. Now compare that with reality. According to Federal Reserve data, households ages 55 to 64, those approaching retirement, have a median retirement balance of about $185,000. That's only 1/7 of what Americans believe they need. This isn't because people don't understand the problem. In fact, the same survey found that more than half of Americans expect to outlive their retirement savings. They recognize the gap. They simply don't have the income to close it. That's why reducing retirement struggles to a lack of discipline misses the point. For many households, it's not about skipping coffee or taking fewer vacations. It's about wages, rising costs, and limited opportunities to save. Some viewers may think, I'm doing better than average. You may be, but remember how misleading averages can be. A small number of wealthy households inflate the statistics, creating a false picture of financial security. The only retirement number that truly matters is your own, your savings, your income, your expenses, and your plan. Those headline figures also hide who faces the greatest challenges. Women often earn less over their careers, spend more time out of the workforce caring for family, and generally live longer. The result is less retirement savings that must last for more years. Many also rely on Social Security for 90% or more of their retirement income and are more likely to face costly long-term care later in life. Retirement inequality extends beyond gender. The racial wealth gap remains substantial, with the typical white household entering retirement with several times the retirement savings of the typical black household, reflecting decades of unequal financial opportunities. So whenever you hear that the average American retiree has over $600,000 saved, remember what's behind the headline. The statistic is technically correct, but for millions of retirees, it bears little resemblance to financial reality. Whenever you hear a statistic that begins with "the average retiree has," ask one question: average compared to who? Once you look beyond the headline, the number often falls apart because averages hide the realities of individual retirees. Now consider one of retirement's biggest financial risks: healthcare. According to Fidelity, a healthy 65-year-old retiring today should expect to spend about $172,500 on healthcare during retirement. For a couple, that estimate rises to roughly $345,000. That's not for travel or discretionary spending. It's simply the expected cost of medical care. For many Americans, that healthcare bill alone exceeds their entire retirement savings, and those estimates don't even include long-term care. Yet someone turning 65 today has about a 70% chance of needing it. A private nursing home room can cost well over $100,000 per year, enough to wipe out the median retirement savings of about $130,000 for Americans age 75 and older in a single year. The problem is made worse because most people underestimate these costs. Americans typically guess retirement healthcare will cost around $75,000, less than half Fidelity's estimate. That's why the Medicare notice beside Linda matters. Her Social Security received a cost of living increase, but higher Medicare Part B premiums absorbed much of it. On paper, her benefit rose. In practice, her spending power barely changed. Retirees also face another growing challenge: debt. The traditional image of retirement, a paid-off home and no credit card balances, is becoming less common. Today, more than 4 in 10 households led by someone ages 65 to 74 still carry credit card debt, and many continue making mortgage payments. For a growing number of Americans, retirement doesn't end monthly bills. It simply means paying them with a much smaller paycheck. The debt many retirees carry isn't from luxury spending, it's from covering everyday necessities. Surveys show older Americans increasingly rely on credit cards for groceries, utilities, prescriptions, and unexpected medical bills because their monthly income often doesn't last until the next Social Security payment. The problem is that credit card interest doesn't disappear in retirement. While Social Security benefits typically rise only modestly through cost of living adjustments, credit card balances can grow at 20% or higher interest rates, creating a financial gap that's difficult to escape. Many people respond by saying, "I'll just work a few extra years." But reality often has other plans. About 3/4 of workers expect to earn income during retirement, yet only about 1/3 of retirees actually do. Likewise, many people plan to retire around 65, but the typical retirement occurs closer to 62. Why? Often because retirement isn't a choice. Around 4 in 10 early retirees leave the workforce because of health problems, while others are forced out by layoffs, restructurings, or buyouts. Older workers, who often earn higher salaries, can be especially vulnerable during workforce reductions. That's why "just work longer" isn't always realistic. It assumes good health, continued employment, and a strong job market, factors that are often beyond a person's control. The broader issue is that retirement itself has fundamentally changed. A few decades ago, most workers with retirement plans had traditional pensions that provided guaranteed lifetime income. In the early 1980s, about 60% of private sector retirement plan participants had pensions. Today, that figure is around 4%. Those pensions were largely replaced by 401ks, shifting the responsibility and the investment and longevity risk from employers to individuals. That's what brings us back to Linda. She's sitting at her kitchen table, trying to solve a retirement equation that previous generations often didn't have to solve on their own. If there's one takeaway from this discussion, it's this: relying on a single employer, one retirement account, or one government benefit is a far more fragile strategy than most people realize. The more income streams you build, the more financial control you have. While you can't control Social Security's long-term future, you can control when you claim benefits. Research shows that claiming too early can reduce lifetime Social Security income by roughly $180,000 compared with a more optimal strategy. The same work history can produce dramatically different lifetime benefits based on timing alone. Healthcare costs are another major expense, but if you're eligible, a health savings account, HSA, offers triple tax advantages. Tax-free contributions, tax-free investment growth, and tax-free withdrawals for qualified medical expenses. Used strategically, it can become a powerful retirement healthcare fund. Another high-impact move is eliminating high-interest debt before retirement. Paying off a credit card charging 22% interest provides a guaranteed return that few investments can match. Most importantly, stop comparing yourself to national averages. Calculate your retirement, expected Social Security income, pensions, healthcare costs, living expenses, and the income your savings must generate to support the life you want. That brings us back to Linda. She's still sitting at her kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, a Medicare notice, grocery coupons, and a retirement account worth about $110,000. She's wondering why her savings don't resemble the numbers she sees in the news. The answer is simple. She was comparing herself to a statistic that never represented the typical retiree. The widely quoted $600,000 average is heavily inflated by a small number of very wealthy households. The real picture is far different. Most retirees depend on a modest Social Security check, limited retirement savings, and careful budgeting to make ends meet. Yet there's one thing those statistics never measure: resilience. The determination to adapt, stretch every dollar, and keep moving forward despite an increasingly challenging retirement landscape. That may be the most important number of all, even if it never appears in a headline. If today's video felt a little uncomfortable, that's okay. Retirement statistics often make people feel like they've failed. But these numbers aren't a judgment of your choices. They reflect how dramatically retirement has changed. Many workers once relied on guaranteed pensions. Today, individuals are expected to save, invest, manage market risk, and fund decades of retirement largely on their own. The most important takeaway is this: don't measure your future against a misleading national average. That headline number isn't your benchmark. What matters is your savings, your income, your expenses, and your retirement goals. Those are the numbers that help you make better financial decisions. The moment you stop comparing yourself to headlines and start planning around your own reality, you're already taking control of your future. This week, take a few minutes to review your finances. Know where you stand today, decide where you want to be tomorrow, and build a retirement plan based on your story, not someone else's. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.